Men are the prize, the podcast. You know who it is. It's Harvey, it's your host. How are you? Hope you're having a good day, a good morning, a good evening, a good week. I hope everything is working out the way you wanted it to. I hope you're doing great. I'm having a good week. I'm feeling good. And I've got another great guest. So this is going to be fun. I just want to start with something. I was listening to a podcast with somebody talking, and somebody dropped a quote that really it hit me because I feel like, one, I agreed with it, but two, it felt like it kind of weaves into the conversation I'm going to have today. And the quote was, when writing the story of your life, don't let anyone else hold the pen. And as men, we brought into this world, and our purpose, our expectations, everything is kind of built for us. This is what you're supposed to do. Be this guy, do this job, do everything. Everything we're supposed to be is just kind of thrown at us. This is what you're supposed to be. So it becomes difficult to kind of be your own person because we're expected to be this. And as I'm reading that quote and kind of thinking about it, it occurs to me that we men have to make a concerted effort to be ourselves, to love what we're supposed to love, not because somebody else told us who we're going to love, what we love doing, ourselves most importantly. So make it important that you don't determine, or you don't let anybody else determine the kind of person or the kind of man you're going to be. You write your own story. You be who you want to be. Because life is just better that way. When you're just free to be who you are, to be the man that you want to be, you're going to be better for it. If you're just trying to fill out the expectations of a wife, a mother, other men, other people, then you're not really living. You're just kind of surviving. And there's a difference. With that said, I start every podcast with this. I am a man who likes to talk. That's what this is. This is a space for men to talk. So I love hearing men's stories. I love talking or the back and forth. But the most important thing is that they're talking, because we're not the best at communicating. And that's what this page is. That's what this podcast is. We communicate. We get it all out, and we do it healthy, so we don't do it toxic later, because we don't do toxicity here. With that said, again, I'm blessed to have a great guest, and his name is Josh Hatcher. And here's his bio, because I love a good bio. Let's get that open. Josh Hatcher is a storyteller, poet, and master of practical advice. Hatcher is a personal development author, poet, and songwriter living in Bradford, PA. As a husband, father, and grandfather, Josh draws inspiration from his family, from his faith, and from nature. He has a background in journalism, broadcasting, and marketing, and finds fulfillment in being creative and mentoring others. Josh is the founder of Manlihood.com and the host of the Manlihood ManCast. Manlihood helps men be better men through personal development resources and building a brotherhood, hoping to level up as men. Mr. Hatcher, welcome to the podcast. How are you today?
Hey, Mr. Hatcher's my father. Actually, it's my grandfather, but no, I got you. I'm glad to be here, man. Thank you.
Glad to have you. I appreciate it. I love a good bio. I like reading it because it's like a quick way to kind of get a feel about somebody. But if I saw you on the street and I knew you, but I really wanted to get a real quick snapshot of you, if I ran to you on the street and I got like 15 seconds, how would you describe you to somebody real quick?
Oh, I would say, first of all, I'm a guy that loves Jesus. I'm a guy that loves my family. I think that's honestly the first and most important thing. Anything else I do comes out of that. So.
Okay. No, simple to the point. I like it. Okay. All right. To anybody who's listening to this podcast, you know where I'm going. If you haven't, welcome to the podcast. I always like to give a quick little synopsis. Men are the Prize is the name of the podcast. Prize is one of my favorite words. I took the letters from the word prize, and the words represent characteristics that I think are good ones for men. The first letter in the word prize is P. The word is purpose. Reason for which something is done or created, or for which something exists. So Josh, what is your purpose?
So I kind of told you when I introduced myself there that, loving Jesus is probably the most important thing I do. And I mean, I'm not here to preach at anybody or shove it down anybody's throat, but that's kind of who I am. I grew up in church. So my purpose is to serve God and to love people. And that's really kind of the core of it. And there's a lot of things that flow out of that. And I think you know, helping men be better men, raising and leading my family with love and integrity. And that's really the core of my purpose, man. I've taken a lot of time to write the whole thing out, and I've got a fancy, written out purpose statement, but conversationally, that's how it comes out.
Hear you. So you're looking to help men be better and, just be better parts of our community, be better men in general. Why aren't we good? Why aren't we as good as we can be right now?
Yeah, I like that you corrected, because I do think men are good. I do think it's good to be a man, and I think that, you know, that's important to me, because a lot of people out there just like to paint all men as bad, or take away from what it means to be a man and replace it with something else entirely. So to answer the question though, why aren't men as good as they can be? Because nobody is, whether you're man or woman, nobody is. We're all imperfect, and we're all flawed. And I think embracing that and understanding that is the starting place. A lot of people end there and they're like, well, I'm just screwed up. I'm flawed. I'm imperfect. Like that's good enough, So take me as I am. No, like, we're flawed and we're imperfect, and we need to strive to be better. And I think that we're living in a world where people get a lot of wrong ideas about what it means to be a man. And I think we need to resurrect the heart of what it means to be a man, not just being tough. And being tough, I think, is part of it. I think that is a part of it, and there's different degrees of that. But I think resurrecting that picture that to be a man is a good thing, and a man is constantly improving himself. An acronym that means nothing is KANEI, Kanai. It doesn't mean anything, but to me, it's constant and never-ending improvement. And so I always kind of put that in front of myself to kind of remind myself, hey, are you moving forward? Because if you're not, it's time to adjust, man.
Okay. I like that. So just because I like to dig in and ask random questions, right now, what are you trying to be better let me rephrase. What characteristic right now are you trying to improve in yourself right now?
I've got two of them that I'm working on really hard right now. And the first one is I am working on accountability. I talk a lot about accountability, and in some areas of my life, I have it. In other areas of my life, I shirk it. And that area that goes along with it, the one that I'm really struggling with, is my weight, my health. I've done a really poor job. I've lost 100 pounds. I've gained most of it back. I lost 50 pounds. I gained most of that back. And, and that 50 pounds I've lost 100 times. So I've lost like 5,000 pounds. But but I struggle with that, and that's a real something I'm really working hard on. And every time I work hard on it, then I'll give in and I'll screw up, and it's just it keeps coming back and forth, man. So that's just an honest,
Right.
that's kind of the main thing I'm really kind of digging into right now, is trying to get my head wrapped around what's going on there, why I keep being drawn to food, why I keep shirking the workouts, why I keep shirking the responsibility of it. So
Okay. You said two. You have another one?
yeah, it was the two of them. It's the accountability portion. And
Right.
I don't lie to my friends when they're asking me how I'm doing, but I
Right.
avoid them.
That's interesting. I can't lie to you if I don't see you. I like
exactly. Exactly. So, I try to be honest. I'm an honest person. So if I know I have to be honest and I want to be honest, you're just not going to see me for a while.
Okay. Yeah, that's the way around it. Okay, I hear you.
And
So
this and for the record, that's bad advice. I mean,
right,
I'm being real and authentic with you. This is the
right,
struggle. It's not like,
right,
hey, everybody, just avoid the people that are holding you account. No, that's not my
right, right. No, you're working on that. You're trying to improve. And we
trying to
understand.
improve.
Yeah, I hear you. Because accountability it's scary. to kind of face up to, what you're doing and what you said you're going to do and haven't accomplished it, to kind of have to man up and look at it and realize, your faults and what you've done. It kind of leads into this question. Is it easier? And I think I know, because I feel like we kind of talk about it all the time. Is it easier to just stick in the status quo, grow up, this is what a man is, and just do it? Or to make a concerted effort to be more than that, to be more than what the description or the gender role or whatever it is? Is it easier to it's just easy? I don't have to fight it. This is what they expect. I'm just going to do it. Or to kind of step out of the box and be more the man that you want to be?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think that um, a lot of it depends on who you are, because for some men, I mean, all they have to do is sneeze and they look like a man, you know? I mean, it's the masculine side of things that we would see as traditionally masculine are just there. You know, they've got the deep voice, they walk a certain way, they look a certain way, and they don't have to put on a show or bravado, you know. So for them, that part is easy, but maybe the integrity and living up to it behind the scenes, which I think is equally as much of what it means to be a man, maybe that is a place where they're lacking. Or maybe that's not hard for them either. There's some men that just across the board, that they're a good man, they're not even working that hard at it. Some people it's just easier. I think some people, um, you know, maybe they're not quite as physically masculine. I think that's probably a good delineation. And because I know that, dude, I think about this all the time. I know I'm going to rabbit trail a little bit. I want you to picture two people in your head. Okay. First one,
Mhm.
Mr. T,
Mhm.
big black dude with a mohawk, chains, muscles all over the place. And he talks like he could rip your head off. Right.
Mhm.
And look at his life for a minute. Right. What do you know about him? What did he do? So picture him in your head. And then I want you to picture Mr. Rogers. Okay, slender
Mhm.
dude with a cardigan, and he changes his shoes when he goes in the house, and he raises goldfish, and he plays with puppets. Now, both of them are masculine. They're very masculine, and we have to get out of this mindset that because one man talks with a little bit of a higher voice, or he's, I mean, both of these men had so much in common. They both loved Jesus. They both loved their mamas. They worked with kids. They worked in kids television, and that's like at the heart of who these guys are. And they're both had the first name Mr. Uh, you know, yeah, it's a good joke. I like that. But what you can't tell me when you watch Mr. Rogers testifying before Congress about the importance of funding children's education that he wasn't being a ferocious man. I mean, that was a masculine, brave, bold thing to do.
Mhm.
And I tell this story all the time too. I read about Mr. Rogers that his wife said that he could fart on command, and he used to play practical jokes on her, and it was a whole thing. I mean, what's more masculine than that? I mean, all men do that. So I think because a lot of people look at him. I remember being a kid and I loved Mr. Rogers. And I loved Mr. T. I loved both of them. And if either of them were on my television set, man, I was glued and I was hooked, because both of them were good at what they did in entertaining and educating children, you know.
Mhm.
And when I watched Mr. Rogers, and my grandmother would come in and she would say, "Oh, I never liked him. He's so fruity." And I'm like, I mean, he was a Presbyterian minister. He was married. He, he just was gentle,
Mhm.
but he was masculine. It's just that his masculinity was not necessarily like Mr. T's.
Mhm.
Doesn't mean it was weaker. It doesn't mean, I mean, physically he might have been weaker than Mr. T, but
Maybe.
but
Mhm.
he was just as manly. And I think that we have to kind of get over this hang up that we have. This is that it's got to be. I mean, and there's nothing at the same time that we can say there's nothing, wrong with the Mr. Rogers version. There's also nothing wrong with the Mr. T version.
Right.
Gosh, our culture is like, oh, that's toxic. What's so toxic about being tough? You know, there's nothing toxic about being tough, about liking the outdoors, and about, you know, uh, starring in a Rocky movie as the bad guy. You know what I mean? That's
Right.
not toxic, you know, and we have to be okay with that too.
Mhm. I hear you talking about these two men, and it's so interesting. And I guess I'll talk a little bit because I see them, but I have a different perspective on both of those men. So I'm 47. I think we're in the same age group. I might even be a little bit older
Mhm.
than you, I think.
Yeah, I'm
But
44.
all right. So Mr. Rogers is probably my favorite TV kids programming ever. I loved Mr. Rogers. And I loved it because of the subject. It was simple. He was just there and he was just talking and characters and whatever. But what really did it for me, and I didn't realize it while it was happening, but I recognize it now as an older Black man, was for a long time, I didn't see me on television. And if you're my age, then you know that when it came time for a Black character to be on a show, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood had one, and he was an officer. He was a police officer. And he just came on the show, and he didn't do anything special. They sat outside, took their shoes off, and put their feet in a kiddie pool, and they talked. It was one of the first times that I turned my television on. And it was a Black man on it. And he wasn't a slave. He wasn't Kunta. He wasn't I don't know, he wasn't a waiter or something. He wasn't serving people. He was just a Black guy on television. And I don't know why it didn't hit me until later on that for some reason that show, it really connected with me because it wasn't a big deal to him. It was a big deal to television. It was a big deal to the entertainment industry. Oh my God, a Black man, what are we going to do? So when I saw that, and I'm not a fan of the word inclusive, but that's really what it was. And I'm like, wow, okay, a Black man can be on TV, a Black police officer can be. So I remember, I love that. The other side of that is Mr. T. I am a wrestling fan of epic proportions, epic. And so, like, ridiculous. So he comes out and he's with Hulk Hogan, and it's the whole rock and wrestling thing, and it's fun and everything. And then by then the A team is out and all this stuff. And I liked seeing a Black guy on TV. I wasn't a fan of how he was portrayed. I want you to consider what he was. He wasn't particularly intelligent. He was the muscle. He would come out, maybe somebody needs to get beat up. Maybe he has the quick catchphrase. He's afraid of flying, so they got to knock him out to put him on a plane. It was, but all through all that, that was a man and a half. And when I'm a kid, I'm like, a man is somebody who could, if need be, could beat my ass right now, and he wouldn't break a sweat. The jewelry wouldn't move. Nobody would touch him. The mohawk, everything about him was man in terms of what we considered physicality. He looked like he was a beast. Yeah, he had a mohawk. You gonna say something about it? No, you're not, because that's Mr. T. So when I hear you talking about him, it's interesting and how we can see two things. Either way, love them both, respect them both, especially Mr. Rogers. I love that man. And I was one of the saddest days when he passed. But I like how that really reflects on what we think of masculinity. You're right. Mr. Rogers is a man and a half too.
Mhm.
Just because he didn't have the muscles. He wasn't physically it, but as a man, emotionally, I don't know if there's ever been a better man, a stronger man, or more representative man than him. Fred Rogers is fantastic. So
Yeah.
just
Yeah,
my little soapbox there.
that's all right. Well, and you know, and let's look at Mr. T again just for a second, because it's not to, because I can see where, yeah, so he wasn't the brightest. And I don't know if you ever watched the TV show, but you know, the cartoon show that he had, it was like, you know, and on there, he also wasn't the smartest, but he sure had a lot of common sense, which actually, it was
Yes.
wisdom. It was wisdom,
Mhm.
you know, so
Right.
I get it. I
Right.
get it. Like, yeah. So, I mean, he was that portrayal. Yeah. He's just a tough guy that isn't that smart. I actually loved the fact that he had to be drugged to get on the plane, because it showed that this, like, because you got to figure, like, you had that same era, you know, you had the Incredible Hulk. He was that kind of character, right? The
Yep.
big brute. He was the brute on the A
Right.
team, especially, right?
Mhm.
You know, on this cartoon show, he was the hero of that show. But
Mhm.
On the A team, he was the brute. And just giving him that simple little weakness. I mean, he was like deathly afraid to fly,
Mhm.
and he had to fly, so they had to put him out. And it was a joke, but at the same time, like I remember being a kid thinking, oh, he's afraid of things too, just like
Mhm.
me.
Yep.
I'm afraid of bugs, and
Mhm.
he's afraid to fly. We got things in common,
Mhm. I hear you. They humanized him in a way, and I wasn't sure if they did it for that specific reason, but I can kind of understand it.
Yeah.
This muscle bound, rough, tough guy. It felt more like a comedy bit to me, but I can also see what you mean. Like he's he makes some he's more relatable
Yeah.
because all that muscle and all that stuff, but he's got fears just like you and me, right? And I hear you. And I didn't take it that way, but that's a valid point. So I like that. I'm gonna move on from that. But I like those two men. And I feel like there's an idea in there because that might be the two spectrum, the opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of manhood. So I like that. I think that's something to consider. Can I ask you, growing up, did you have a person like you as a influence?
So my growing up was really rough. I had the best dad who loved me to death. My mom loved me to death. I had great parents. And my dad was, um, he was tough and he was tender. Um, you know, I have a story that I want to get to. It's another pop culture story. So just remind me later if there's an
Okay.
appropriate time to ask about how my dad taught me it was okay to cry. Okay.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
because that's important, I want to talk about that, but I don't want to talk about it yet.
Right.
So I had that. I had, good people in the church that I grew up in. But when I went to school, man, I had nobody. I was alone. I didn't have any friends. I was picked on. I was bullied until uh, really until about eighth grade, and
Oh, wow.
it was bad. I mean, I had to fight like every day from about sixth grade until the end of eighth grade. I had to get
Mm.
into a fight. I had to, and I'm not saying that in a way to say like I fought because it was fun to fight, or no, I mean, I had to fight. I had to defend myself.
Right.
And my dad was had an even worse. He grew up on the east side of St. Louis, and he was the only white kid in his neighborhood. You know what I mean? He had to fight because he was the minority there, and they were after his lunch money. And so he had to fight. So he taught me. He also had to fight against an alcoholic father who would beat up his mom. So my dad taught me how to fight, so I knew how to defend myself, and I did. I won a lot of fights and I lost a lot of fights. um but I and I could make another whole commentary about the way that our culture has created it as though violence is never the answer, is the thing they say. And I tend to think that it's usually not the answer. It should be the last answer, but sometimes, you know, Hitler should have been shot in the head. Unfortunately, he shot himself before we got to. Well, at least unless you believe the conspiracy theories, which that could be, but that's another story. But the point is, he was evil and needed to be shot.
Mhm.
And there is a time and a place to fight. There is a time and a place to stand up for yourself and to stand up and protect others. And so I do believe that. And I'm not a fan of violence. I don't think violence is, uh, you know, something that we should all strive to be. I think we should strive to be capable to handle ourselves and to protect ourselves, but I don't think we should ever desire it. Anyway, my point though is there was a moment for me that, um, like you said, did you have anybody that represented me, that where I could feel seen? I didn't have that until about eighth grade, and I had a music teacher who happened to notice that I was hanging around a lot, happened to notice that I was not happy, that I was bullied, and I had already tried to. Uh, I call it a suicide attempt, but I didn't get as far as actually hurting myself. I was ready to go. I had the knife. I was gonna, and I just kind of didn't at 13 because of all that pain. And somewhere in there that year, I had made one friend, and I had some people who, looking back, were my friends, but I had been friendless for so long that I couldn't even receive anything from them. And so this
Okay.
teacher, he wrote me a blank hall pass. He just signed it, didn't put a date on it, and it said Josh could basically go to the music room whenever he wanted. And that's where I felt seen. That's where I felt appreciated. That's where I felt acceptance. And in the music and the art, I had an English teacher that did a very similar thing with me. And, she would always write a positive note when I would write in my journals. And, we'd have to write a journal in class every day. And she'd pull that red pen out and she'd correct a little grammar here and there, and she always, though, would just like make me feel. I still have that journal and I pulled it out. She died a couple years ago, and when she died, I said, I want to pull that out, and I pulled it out and I read it. And I think that right there was her. Mrs. Kelly and Mr. Myers are two of the people that made the biggest impact in terms of allowing me to be who I was, this creative kid who loved to make something, who loved to put his feelings into the saxophone and his voice and to write poetry. And I actually, felt cool for those things because of those teachers. Whereas any other time I felt very uncool. So yeah, I did have somebody, but it wasn't necessarily like like a figure out in the world. I didn't, yeah, that was all escapism for me.
I'm I am a I'm an 80s kid by nature, so I love pop culture stuff. So when I'm having conversations with people, my mind goes to places that it shouldn't because of movies or songs come to me for no reason. And
That's
while you were
okay.
talking about your dad, you seen City Slickers?
Hmm.
I'm hearing you talk about your dad, and I'm remembering in my head what pops up is, me and my dad, we weren't the closest. He wasn't the warmest of men, but when it came to baseball, we could talk.
Mm.
And it just the relationship between a father and a son, it there's so many different levels to it. It's a lot about how you see your dad. He's tough, but he's tender. He's hard on me, but he showed me how to be emotional. So when I hear stuff,
Mm.
because I don't have that, I have a relationship with my dad now, but I didn't have one growing up.
Mhm.
So that whole time, I didn't really have that person to talk to. So I find dad moments in movies and in conversations I have with
I
men.
got you.
So I'm glad to hear that. And then of course a random movie thing comes to mind. But we move on. The next
It's all
letter
good.
in the word prize is R. The word is resilience. Resilience, the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties and toughness. So, can you think, and you may have kind of glossed over it already or mentioned it, can you think of a situation where something happened to you where you discovered some resilience that you didn't know you had?
Yeah, man. I wasn't very resilient, and so I think life had to keep throwing me against the wall till I learned to bounce.
Okay.
um, I when I went to college, I met this girl, and she was really a pretty girl. I went to college in Virginia, and she was from Wellsboro, PA, which is not far from where I grew up. She's just like one county over, and we're in the middle of nowhere up here, man. And so to meet somebody that many miles away from where you're from was kind of cool. And so, I really liked her, and I just didn't get up the nerve to ask her out. And so, um, I I we had it was a conservative Christian school, so instead of fraternities and sororities, we had brother dorms and sister dorms. So you kind of hung out with a group that kind of gave you your friend group kind of built in. I mean, you didn't have to do it, but we just loved it. Like our dorm, like totally connected with our sister dorm.
Mhm.
And I kind of worked it out. I like talked to my buddy who was going to be an RA. We got it worked out so that she was going to be the RA in my sister dorm, where I was the activities director. So we'd get to plan fun stuff, and I figured I'd get to see her 3 times a week, or more. And I was he was excited because he's like, he knows, man. And when I was in college, they called me Slick because I wasn't. Um, and my wife, which is not this girl, by the way, but my wife fell in love with me um, before she knew my name was Josh. She knew me as Slick when she fell in love with me.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
Anyway, so I go home for the summer, all excited about the prospects of the next year. And this girl, I get a call and she had died in a car crash. And I was devastated. And like we were friends, but not super close. It was more like she helped me pass a class because she kept me awake at that 8 o'clock class in the morning. We studied together a little bit and we had enough in common that I knew this is the one. I like this girl. I want to pursue her, you know. But I didn't quite have that nerve. I don't even know if she had a boyfriend. I didn't even get that far in the conversation. I think she might have, but I knew if she did have a boyfriend, she would have a new boyfriend when the new year rolled around, you know. And so it threw me for a loop. And for the rest of that summer, I was pretty bummed out, but I kind of just had this determination. And I'm like, if I ever feel that way about another girl, I'm going to tell her immediately. And daggone it, I mean, I met this girl, you know, just a few months later when we went back for the school year. And I'm like, I remember I pulled my saxophone out and I played her a song. I mean, we were hanging out together all the time with our dorms.
Right.
And I'm like, I played her a song and I told her, I said, "You're the kind of girl I want to marry." And she looks at me, she goes, "Well, you're the kind of guy I want to marry." But I'm dating Jesus right now for the next 6 months. She got out of a bad relationship. And I'm like, oh, well, I said, well, I'll still be here. I'll be your friend for 6 months if that's what it takes. I'm not going anywhere. And she didn't make it 6 months. Yeah. So
You had no choice. You were there, slick. I like that.
yeah. That was like the slickest I've ever been in my entire life.
Ooh, that's
but
bold.
you know, but the point though is that resilience. I had to learn that, you know, like sometimes you can kind of hang your hopes and dreams on something and it just doesn't work out, you know. And there are times when I'm more resilient than others, you know. When I lost my dad, you know, and my dad and I were very close all the way through. And when I lost my dad, you know, that's been 3 years now, and daggone it, I still am struggling through that grief. I'll do okay and I'll be doing good. And then, gosh darn it, I think Facebook memories and Google
Oh
Photos
yeah.
memories are the
Oh
worst
no. Mhm.
because they'll hit you just when you're like, you
Mhm.
know. And
Mhm.
so I like to think that I'm doing well with grief, like I'm doing what I need to be doing through this process and doing it the right way. But I just expected that, you know, it wouldn't hurt this long and this hard. So that's a place where like I don't know that I'm as resilient as I need to be, but I don't know. I don't know. I think that's a hard answer for that one, you know. But
No, it's a real answer. And I'm with you in terms of the Facebook stuff. I like it because I take a lot of pictures with my kids and such.
mhm,
But sometimes, just like my last daughter spent 7 days in a NICU when she was born,
mhm,
and the longest 7 days of my life because I didn't know she was going to make it. And occasionally a picture will come up where maybe she's just like right out of it, and she's happy and she's a crazy running around kid now. But occasionally I'll just dip back into like drive into that NICU, having to wash, do all this stuff just to sit and hang out with my dog for a few hours. And I know what you mean. I know what you mean. But you make it through. And can I just say, there's no set way on how to handle grief and deal with it.
mhm.
You're doing just fine. There's no workbook, there's no list. You do this, this, and this. You handle grief how you need to handle it.
Yeah.
So I just, as you know, a little bit of advice I can say, just keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Um, with that said, do you now, if I step back a little bit in terms of that, you know, the woman who could have been a relationship, but it didn't because she passed, and it feels like now you don't waste time. Now, obviously, it extended to eventually your wife. Did that extend into other things you do in your life? Did you decide I'm going to do this and not wait and just go for it?
With some things, what I definitely don't wait on is telling people I love them. And my friends, it's funny because I will say, Harvey, I love you and you are my friend because we've already had 2 conversations now.
Yes,
And
sir.
that's kind of the way I live my life. Like if we talk, we're friends. You know, my poor podcast guests, because you show up on my podcast and somewhere down the road somebody else will be talking about something and I'll be like, oh, my friend talked about that, and and it's just the way it is. That's who I am, man. I learned that from my dad, is that everybody can be your friend. Now, yes, I know you can't trust everybody. I get that. So some friends I have that are close and some friends I have at a distance, but we're friendly. I will consider you a friend. That I think that's a happier way to live life. Uh, and so, the little kid that didn't have any friends now has lots of friends.
Oh yeah.
But,
Oh yeah.
but, I tell my friends all the time, I love you. And I'll give them a hug. I'll give them a kiss on the cheek. And, a big old, 400-pound man grabbing a hold of you and kissing you on the cheek. What are they going to do? You can say, no, don't kiss me. You're going to take it because I love you. My bald friends get kissed on the head, bald short ones, especially. Yeah, that's just what I do. And it doesn't, and, and there's nothing homoerotic about it. That's not me, it's just love, man. And so I think that's one of the lessons that I took from that is you don't wait to tell somebody how you feel about them. You don't, when I die, which could be tomorrow, hopefully I kind of have a goal. I did the math on this. And if I can make it to 86, then both of my boys will be over 65 and we can be, wait, is that right? Yeah, I think so. Anyway, but we'll be old men together. That would be fun. So that's kind of my goal. If I can make it that long, we have at least a short amount of time where we can all be old men together. That would be hilarious. So, but when I die, I don't want anybody out there to question whether I loved them or not. I don't want anybody to be like, did he love me? No, I'm going to tell you. I don't want to leave that unsaid ever. There's lots of things I should leave unsaid, and I'm trying to work on that, because I say a lot of things I shouldn't. So I'm working on that, and I think I'm better at it now than I was 10 years ago, 15 years ago, but I will never hesitate to tell somebody that I love them. That's something I want to say as much as possible.
Beautiful. That's good. I talked to a guy way back and we talked about time management. And I'll do this quick. And I have an 18-year-old son who's going to do the college thing. And when I talked to him about time management, it's just, and you got 4 classes, 12 credits, huge textbook, reports, papers, and you're working. You have to be able to handle your time. You have to manage it well. But in having this discussion with another man, we kind of got into a different definition of it, and you fit into it. Time management can be what I described with my son in terms of going to school and managing his time, or it can be recognition that we don't know how much time we have left. So I make a point to do what I want to do now, or I'm trying. I could say, you know what, I want to get into shape. I'm going to start tomorrow. I may not wake up tomorrow. I'm start right now. I may find some woman who I really think is attractive. I'm going to build up the nerve to go talk to her. I'm going to make a fool of myself and I'm going to go do it right now because I don't know when I'm going to have an opportunity to do it, to manage the time, especially because we don't know how long we have. Time management is important. And I hear that when you're talking about that in a potential relationship. I just think it's interesting.
That's why I've got 2 skulls behind me on my set. Why my t-shirt's got a skull on it, because it is
Nice.
it's not just because it's cool. The back of it, by the way, says "Man the heck up," which I think is kind of cool.
Oh, I love it.
But it's for me that concept of memento mori, which is the Stoic philosophy that remember that you too will die. You will die, and and it's not morbidity, like I said earlier, I've got my whole life is kind of based around faith in Jesus. So the philosophy there is that death is not the end, that death has been defeated. So I get that there's more, I get that. But in the meantime, that's what I love about that Stoic philosophy is that, the early Christians kind of adopted it, even though it came out of the Greek philosophers, and the Greek and the Roman philosophers, especially the Greek though, and then the Romans adapted it and kind of made it theirs, and then the Christians are like, that makes sense for what we believe too. So it just kind of transcends all of those different philosophies, and it makes sense. And that's, I think about that a lot. Someday I'm going to die.
Mhm.
I had a heart attack about a year and a half ago, and my wife was not ready for me to die, and I wasn't ready to die, but and actually I didn't think I was going to die. I didn't even take it seriously. I mean, like, I was in the hospital bed making jokes because I hate hospitals, and making jokes makes me feel better. But
Mhm.
there was a moment when I got pretty scared, and I thought, man, I've got so much left to do. I've got so much left to do. I've got a lot more love to give. I've got a lot more people that need me and that are counting on me. It's not time. So I didn't. I just said, I'm not going to die today.
Okay,
Right.
that's all it's up.
Like it works that way.
If only were that simple. If only. Oh, that's good that you're back. I had two stints in the hospital because I'm a diabetic, and I discovered I was a diabetic right around my 40th birthday, and it collapsed one day while my wife was on bed rest because she was pregnant with our child. So she had to get up and drive me to the emergency room. I had, my blood sugar was 500. I was a mess, an absolute mess. And I always think about that when I talk to men because I wasn't paying attention to the signs that were right in my face. I'm exhausted. I'm in the bathroom. I'm pissing all the time.
Mhm.
But I was so concerned with taking care of my wife because she's not even supposed to get up. And I still have three other kids that we have to take care of. My focus was there and it wasn't here. And we don't do it. We don't. We kind of find a way to get back to talking about men. We do not take care of ourselves. We don't make ourselves a priority because we're not built to do that. We're built to make everybody else a priority. That's one of those big parts of being a man. And taking care of yourself is not something that's really talked about. Not a lot.
Mm-mm.
What do you do to self-soothe?
So, I drum with my teeth, and I fidget. like like at any given moment there's music in my head and in my mouth, and like I'll be sitting there, I'm like how like you can suck your skin of your inside your mouth through your teeth, like I'm doing that in rhythm like all the time. And
Okay.
um it's probably not a healthy way to do it because sometimes
Not
I'll
at
get
all.
cold, so but it's just like a habit that I do,
Right.
or I fiddle with stuff, dude. Since we're telling stories, the fiddling, man, I like when those fidget spinners came out, I'm like, somebody sees me. Because when I was in college, it was 3 a.m. I'm talking to the girl that would be my wife on the phone, and we're talking, and I'm fiddling. I'm just standing in the hallway outside my dorm room, just fiddling. Next thing I realize, it was one of those fire alarms where if you push the little door in and then you pull down on the handle. But when I got my finger stuck in the door, and the only way to get it out was to pull it down. $200 fine later, death threats. We all go outside, all these guys in their underwear in the parking lot, and they're like, when I find out who did this, I'm going to kill him. And I'm being honest, so I had to tell the RA it was me, so I got the fine, which I didn't know I got. He's like, we'll get you out of the fine, it's okay, you were honest. Yeah, I got my school bill later and it was there.
Fine.
But that fidgeting, so um one thing that I do that's more of a healthier way is when I am, and I have to be real disciplined with it, but I love to write. I love to write poetry and just put and write music, and put those things together, and that gives me an outlet for the things that I'm feeling. And I haven't really done it in a little while. Um, there was a time when actually my daughter was really good at that, and she was kind of struggling with some stuff, and I'm like, why don't we? She was in college, and I think all this anxiety was just too much for her. And like, why don't we just do a challenge? Let's write a poem a day for a month, and let's just see what comes out of it. And we liked it, so we did it again. So we took a break, then we did 2 months, and then we took those poems and we edited them, and we each released a book of poetry on the same day on Amazon, and had a book release and everything. And my English teacher that I told you about, she came, and yeah, it was the best. It was the best. But that was a way, and I don't write every poem necessarily with the goal of publishing it, but I also don't want to waste a good poem. So So that's one of the ways that I think I like, one of the healthy ways that I definitely kind of channel my emotion and my feelings into something that is helpful. Um, that's kind of a soothing thing for me
That's good.
to put it out there.
That's I like that. A lot of times, men, when I ask that question, it's a real, I don't know. I don't know. I'm supposed to do something for myself. A lot of times the whole idea of taking care of yourself is foreign. It really is.
I've got another thing I love to do, and my son and I have been working out. So this is my middle son. I had to lose some weight so I could get my cataract surgery done. I'm kind of at that threshold of too too risky, So I had to lose some weight, and so twice a week I was going to work out. And a friend has a gym that they let us use, and they had a heavy bag. And so my son is like, he's got some karate, some boxing training, and not much, just when he was a teenager. But he's like, hey, let's do this. And I'm telling you what, like, that feels good to to hammer away at that bag and put that, and it's not always anger, like it could be joy, like whatever it is that I'm feeling, I need to get it out, man, just to go, a couple 2-minute rounds on the bag, and man, just to sweat it out and pound it out, hitting as hard as you can, but trying to keep your form good too, because when your form is
Mm.
good, you're hitting it with more power. But it's just that physicality of it. I could just pound it, hit it, and then I'm hurting my wrists and I'm splitting my knuckles open or whatever. But when I'm using that good form, it it's a release both of good and bad emotions, to get them out, to channel them into something. And that's another thing I like to do.
That's good. That's good. And that's important. It's good to get that stuff out. I know I'm a music. I don't know. Like I said, I'm an 80s kid. I'm
Mhm.
music. So I'm jazz. I'm bad hair band 80s, Def Leppard and Bon Jovi, and just kind of just plays with stuff, and it's a good release. And I think and it's not a big thing. It's small, but it's big for me. And a lot of men don't have something like that. So that's kind of what I like to do. So it's good to hear somebody with an answer, like a real thing that you do. And for people who are listening, if you don't have something like that, find something that you enjoy that is just for you. This is one thing. You're allowed to do something for yourself that doesn't include somebody else. It can, but it doesn't have to. The only person that should really be benefiting is you. And if you include others, that's great. But make sure you feel good out of something for yourself, because we deserve it.
Make sure it's not destructive, though. I say that because,
Mm.
one of the things I do to self-soothe is to shove candy bars and energy drinks and greasy gas station pizza down my gullet, and that
Yeah.
is destructive. My buddy told me one time, he's like, his dad had committed suicide, and he's like, I think about it every day. We were both struggling with the same stuff. He's like, I think about this every day, and I feel like I need to say it to you so that we can both hear it. And he said, my dad committed suicide, and it was really fast, but we're doing the same thing. It's just slow.
Mm.
It's a lot slower, but it's the same thing. And so that's what I'm trying to remind myself whenever, because that's what happens. It's that emotional eating, where I'm like, I stopped listening to the news on the radio because I liked it, because I would hear the news and it'd make me angry, and then I would yell at it.
Okay. Okay.
I thought, that's making me feel better. And then I thought about it later, and I'm like, if it's making me feel better, why do I keep going to the gas station and getting more pizza?
Mm.
And
Oh my
so
God.
if you're, and I have friends the same way. Like, I have a buddy who just started chewing again. He hasn't chewed in 10 years, and he decided he wanted some chewing tobacco because he was going through a stressful time. And I'm like, yeah, we got to avoid that. Like, and I'm not saying you can't do something. I'm not going to be like, thou shalt not drink, thou shalt not use tobacco or eat a piece of pizza. I'm just saying, don't do something destructive to soothe. That's like the opposite of soothing.
Right.
Don't
Right.
fiddle with fire alarms at 3 a.m. to soothe
Yeah, don't
yourself.
do that. That's bad. Don't do that. I skipped the I in the word prize till the end, but the next letter is Z. The word is zeal, enthusiastic devotion. So, what are you enthusiastically devoted to?
The There are a few things, and the first thing is my relationship with the Lord. And like I said, I'm not here to shovel it down anybody's throat. I'm sick of Christians that do that stuff. I I identify as a Christian, but sometimes it makes me uncomfortable because that word is so charged in our culture, because some Christians are just buttholes.
Mhm.
And I don't want you to think that that's me. Although I have been a butthole sometimes, but it's not about, um, at least I'm admitting that I'm a butthole. That's the difference. Um, so, some people are just cruel, and they don't look anything like Jesus. So I guess the thing that I'm devoted to is trying to not only love Jesus, but live like him, because he says, if you love me, you'll keep my commandments. So if I can do what he said and then live my life that way, then I'm a man who is kind, a man who is loving, a man who is compassionate, a man who is um, willing to sacrifice, to willing to lay down my life for my friends. If that's the way I try to live. And I don't always get it right. In fact, I probably get it wrong, almost as much as I get it right. But that's something I'm devoted to, is to trying to improve that. And the other thing, I'm zealous about my wife. Z is a great letter because that's the first letter of her name, Zoe. Um, we've been married 24 years. July 4th, on July 4th, 1998, we got married, and July 4th, 1999, we had twins. And yeah, it was crazy. I don't know what we were thinking, but our and we had two more kids after that. And so my kids, and now I've got one of those twins has a little girl. She had her daughter, and the other twin and his wife are going to have a baby in December. So, you know, that zealous devotion to my wife and to my family is definitely important to me. And my wife and I, we take a date night every week, and we didn't used to do that when the kids were little. That was really hard. And I think
Mhm.
it's important for people to be like, if you can't do it every week, do something as often as you can. you
Mhm.
know Find a sitter you can trust, find a way that you can get time together. Or after they go to bed, maybe you sit down and maybe you feed them chicken nuggets and you put them to bed, and then you make a special dinner and you have it on the front stoop. You know what I mean? You do something to enjoy each other's time, and you've got to do that, because and oh man, when we had gotten out of the habit and then we started doing it, it was rough. Like the first 6 weeks of date night, man, we'd fight every time because we
Mhm.
just hadn't gotten used to spending time together.
Right. Right.
And we had a lot of frustration with the way things had been going, and so we just had to be patient and work through it and be humble. Yeah, we fought. I mean, you have a good marriage has at least one fight a day. That's not always true, but you've got to. My dad always taught me to learn to fight nice.
Yes, sir.
And so we don't. When I say we have a fight, that's not like when I fought when I was a kid. It's not like when I fighting with the heavy bag. I mean, it's just we disagree about something and maybe get a little snippy. I mean, you do not throw insults at your spouse. You do not throw uh harsh language at your spouse. It's okay. I'll even give you permission to be a little bit rude sometimes, but don't insult her. That's your spouse, that's your wife, that's your life partner, that's who you're supposed to be with for the rest of your life, come hell or high water. And I'm willing to bet she has probably put up with way more of your crap than, I don't mean you, I mean all the guys listening, but she's probably put up with way more of your crap than you could ever dream of putting up with from her. So show her some love and show her some respect, because yeah, that's important to me, is trying to love my wife. I could never love her as good as she loved me, so I'm doing the best I can.
Can you think of what has been married to your wife? How has it affected your masculinity?
um so that's a really good question. I know that you know, when we got married and we were, young and full of lots of hormones, I felt very manly in that relationship. Um, and there's been many times. I mean, she can cut a look across the room and makes it feel like my balls got snipped right off. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
I mean, that's the power of a woman.
Mhm.
And at the same time, she can walk across the room and she can cut me a different kind of look that, you know, makes me feel like I popped 10 Viagra. You know what I'm saying? It's
Mhm.
all about, I don't believe that a woman can bestow manhood upon a man. A woman can't teach a man how to be a man, but a woman can arouse it in a man, and she can also castrate it in a man. And that's why it's really important to get a good woman. Everybody wants to go out to the club where it's fun to find a woman, but that's not necessarily the best woman you're going to find. You need to start fishing in the holes that have the good fish.
Mhm. Valid. So very true. So very true. The last letter in the word prize is E. The word is expectation. Expectation is defined as a strong belief that something will happen or be the case in the future. What do you expect of yourself, Josh? Or I'm going to start calling you Slick because I just like Slick.
Go for
If
it.
that's okay, cool. So, Slick, in a year, where are you going to be? What will you have accomplished? What do you expect of yourself? August, such and such, whatever day we're recording, 2023.
Um, there's some things I have to be discreet, so I won't answer all of the things that I want to answer here.
Okay.
Um, but I will say I expect in 1 year, I expect to lose 75 pounds. I lost
Got it.
100 in a year before, so I know I can do it. I want to
Mhm.
lose a little slower this time. Uh, Maybe that'll help me to stick with it. So I
Okay.
expect to have lost 75 pounds. I
Mhm.
also expect to have a year from now. Let's see, you said that's August 2nd is when we're recording this. I'm not sure when it'll air, but
Yeah.
so in August of 2023, I will be wrapping up season 6 of my podcast and headed into season 7. And that'll also be marking, we will have celebrated 10 years of Manlihood's existence as a website. And I'm really, really trusting in knowing that what's going to happen is that, you know, we will be reaching a lot more men and helping a lot more men. And I think I'll be doing it at a different level at that. I know that I'll be doing it at a different level at that place, because if I look at where I was a year ago and what we've done with it since then, um, yeah, it's going to continue. I've got a lot. I have a big list.
That's
So
good.
I don't want to talk too long about it, but I actually have a book called Change Your Life in a Year. And there's a workbook that goes with it that I wrote. And it actually just like I actually needed a system. My ADHD brain was all over the place. So I made this, printed it out, and I did it. That was the year that in 1 year, I lost 100 pounds. I wrote and self-published 6 books. And gosh, there was so many things I did that year, because what I did is I just set some goals for myself. It's time to do that again for me, because I
Mhm.
need some new goals to drive myself a little bit.
Gotcha.
But if you expect something of yourself, it means nothing if you're not willing to make a plan, to put it into action, and to make a goal without a deadline and without a plan is just a dream. And I've been there and I've done that. I've been dreaming too long. So it's time to start turning that goal into something that can be done.
I hear you. I'm in that exact place right now. Just need to press. I need to press. Got to get the accelerator going. I'm kind of stuck. I have to move on. What I do expect right now, though, is that there's a story that you're supposed to be telling me right now, and I would like to hear it. I believe a story about your father, and that's,
I
yeah. So let's get to it. I want to hear that.
was about 5 years old. And this was back in the days when poor folks like us had to rent a VCR from the video store. So
Okay.
we'd go to the store and we'd rent a VCR and a pile of tapes. And I'm pretty sure that the guy had pirated all the tapes. I think he had just copied them all.
Mhm.
But we rented a movie called The Champ. It was a boxing movie with Ricky Schroeder. and the dad dies in the ring. Spoiler alert. I should have gave the spoiler alert first. Dad dies in the ring. I think it's, you don't have to give a spoiler alert if the movie's that
The
old.
movie's like 40 years old. It's okay.
Yeah. Dad dies in the ring. Well,
Mhm.
I told you my dad grew up a fighter. He loved to box. He, and we watched boxing all the time when I was a kid. And he sat there and just was like, there was tears streaming down his face, and shaking, crying, it really moved him. And I had never really, I'm sure my dad had cried before that. I think
Mhm.
it may have touched on some of the uh, struggles with his relationship with his father, because they were in the process of mending that. That was when my grandpa had stopped drinking. And
Mhm.
so he was mending that relationship with his father. So that movie just hit him in the gut. And he just sat there and
Mhm.
he was crying. And uh, like I said, this wasn't something I had seen before, although it was something he did often. I just didn't know it. And I said, "Why are you crying? You're crying about that movie." And I laughed at him because I was 6. And he said, "Son, it takes a big man to cry, and it takes an even bigger man to laugh at him. You're not bigger than me, buddy."
Mm.
And then the next thing that happened is he said, "Okay, I'm going to rent a movie for you to watch." And so he went right back out to the store and he got Where the Red Fern Grows, and taught me a very important lesson about crying at movies.
Oh man. Oh,
I cried and
oh,
cried
oh.
and cried. Oh, it was such a good movie, though.
Yeah, but no. Okay. Yeah, we're not gonna do a spoiler alert, but if you haven't seen that movie, get some Kleenex, watch the movie, and damn, I'm kind of, I don't know. I mean, I respect him. I'm a little mad at him for having you watch that at 6. I'm like, what are you doing?
Oh, I think I remember watching it with my kids. I think they were a little bit older, but I remember watching it with my kids and they got so mad at me. Like, why did you make us watch this?
Oh my God.
But it
Oh,
but it's the whole point is, you know, there are things in life worth crying about. It's okay to cry,
yeah.
you know. And it's also okay not to cry too, If you don't need to cry, you don't need to cry. But don't belittle somebody that, I don't think if you're a man, I don't think you should be crying all the time at everything. If you're sad all the time and you're crying all the time at everything, you might need to go get it checked out,
Right.
you know, and that's
Right.
okay. But there
Mhm.
are times in your life, you know, I stood up. I was stood up in both of my kids' weddings. My daughter married a really good friend of mine. He asked me to be in his wedding. My son married a good family friend, and he asked my brother and I to be his best men because my dad couldn't be there. He wanted his grandpa to be his best man, and he was gone. So he said, "You guys are both of you are almost as good as one him. So you can both be my best men." And I cried at both of them. I cried the whole time. So
And you're right. It's okay. Emotion is okay. I'll my wife really would love hearing you say this because I don't cry. And it's not this concerted effort to not cry because I don't want to
mm,
seem effeminate or something for my wife. I'm just not, I'm pretty stoic. I've kind of been through enough. And she's like, you didn't cry at our wedding. You didn't cry at the vow renewal. You didn't cry when the baby was born. You didn't
right.
cry when the kid when my daughter was in the NICU. Like, what the hell?
Hey,
Just
give me her email address and I'll give her some movie recommendations.
she you didn't cry at the Lion King? Like, what is wrong with you? It's fiction, damn it. I'm sorry, I can't do it. I can't. But yes, she would here, watch this, watch this. I got something. But it is what it is. I save the I in the word prize because I think it's a good way to kind of end that questioning. The I doesn't reflect a word, it reflects the man. We've talked about purpose, resilience, zeal, and expectation. But let's talk about you for a second. Let's take all the shackles and stuff off. So you're not a husband, father, podcaster, um, best friend, employee, anything else. It's just you, Josh. So when you are sitting here and you don't have the titles, the shackles, the roles, anything, and it's just you at your core, who are you?
I am a man who, I think we could go back to the beginning of this conversation. I'm a man who loves Jesus, and I'm a man who loves to laugh. I'm a man who loves to have fun, a man who loves nature, a man who loves his family. I mean, I know I'm taking the shackles off of
Mhm.
the role of dad and husband, but
Mhm.
I still love them. That's so, even if I didn't have them, I would love my family, the people that are around me. I think that's really who I am, man. And that's who I want to be. I want to be somebody that just loves. I know that sounds kind of hippy dippy, but
Stop it. No, that's
that's
good.
it, man. That's it.
Is that enough for you?
Definitely. Definitely. That's everything for me.
It's good. I have three more questions.
Ask
Thanks for
away.
answering the questions within the prize mantra. I appreciate it. These questions hit people differently because it comes to spirituality and your beliefs and such, but I'm interested to hear. What are you afraid of that you can not control?
Mm, that's a really good question. I always tell people I'm not afraid of much, but I startle really easily. So don't come up on me and try to.
Boo!
Yeah, no, don't do that. Don't do that. I might get socked in the teeth, or I might scream like a little girl. I've done both. Um, I think if I'm honest, the thing. So, like I say, I'm not afraid of much. I I I will say that the moments that I know that my body is reacting in anxiety, which is fear, are the moments when I'm trapped in a crowd. I could get up in front of 10,000 people and speak or sing, and it wouldn't bother me a bit. But if I had to wait in a line of 15 people to go to the bathroom, and I know that sounds like I'm making a joke, but no, it really does. Like, I get on edge, I'm looking around, I'm trying to figure out how can I make this line move without, I get very uncomfortable, and it's a flaw in me. I would say things like, "Oh, I'm afraid of losing my family," but we've already talked about that. Everything dies eventually. Everything's going to die. I hope it doesn't happen in my lifetime. That would hurt. I hate grieving. I don't want to grieve over these people that I love, but I'm not afraid of it. I just don't want to do it. So for me, fear isn't something that I generally reside in, but I do have, I bugs. I don't like bugs, man. They make me very uncomfortable. Spiders, not as bad because they eat the bugs.
Okay.
So I know I know you're probably like, I wanted you to take this more seriously, but I
No.
but I but I mean it. Like, I really don't. There's I don't have a whole lot of fear in my life. And I'm not saying in a bragging way. That's just, I think maybe just because of the way that I had to grow up, the things I experienced. Maybe I guess I ask myself all the time, well, what's the worst that can happen? And well, I guess I've been through worse than that.
Mhm.
I've seen worse than that, or well, I haven't been through that, but well, I mean, we can get through it. And again, if I take that back to my spirituality, I mean, I have the opposite of fear is faith. It is trust. I trust that it's going to be okay. I trust that God's going to take care of me. And so for me, that is I mean, I think that there's more than 360 times in the English Bible that it says, "Do not be afraid," or "Do not fear." So for me, that's something that I've learned a lot, that it's okay. I mean, it doesn't mean that I, never feel fear,
Mhm.
especially if a bug comes at me or if I'm in a crowd of people, but it's not something that keeps me up at night. There's very few things that keep me up at night, and I can't even remember the last time I didn't sleep in peace.
That's true. That's true. Last question is this. We talked a little bit earlier about how men don't know how to kind of prioritize themselves and their sanity and their psyche and their happiness and their just everything about them. Another thing that we don't do, and this is kind of the basis of this whole podcast, is talking. And I think men are good at talking, at, expressing emotion, but I think a lot of times we don't have somebody to talk to. And the more I ask men this, I'm getting better answers like, yeah, I've got one. But originally, they didn't have a person. So my question is, aside from family and aside from your wife, do you have a person you could call right now to say, I did something stupid, really dumb, who would listen to you, agree with your stupidity,
Right, right.
like, yeah, you're right, that was dumb, but would trust and feel safe with telling that person everything and knowing that when that conversation was done, that you'd be okay? Do you have a person that you trust that much?
I have many. I have been very fortunate to build around me a good network of people. So even depending on what the issue is that I did that was stupid, I've got different people for different things. But I will say, like I said, sometimes I can struggle with that accountability. So
Mhm.
I have them, whether I always use them or use them as much as I should. I'm working on that. I
Mhm.
and I'll be honest, part of that is just, um, I think I may have not been as, uh, I think some of this may be recent just because with my role, with the things I'm doing, with the way that I'm seen in my community, I think I may be a little more hesitant for people to see my weaknesses. And
Okay.
so because of that, I'm a little, I, that's where that hedging accountability comes from, because I don't want to let everybody get too close. I don't want to. So I do struggle with that a little bit, but honestly, the way that I live my life with my friends, they usually see it before I do. So if I'm doing something stupid, they see it before I even do it. That's the kind of friendships that I've got and that I've built. I think of my buddy Brian, who is, he's been there through thick and thin. We've been friends for 15, 17, probably 17 years. And he has rescued me so many times, and I have been there for him. And he just is a big burly guy with a big beard. He's like the white Mr. T. Uh, and he's always got my back, and he's probably the closest of my friends. But I've got some others. I've got some old men. I'm going to tell you what, you want a good friend, find an old guy, an old retired guy who's got nothing else to do, who needs a friend, because you need to learn what he knows. And so I think of my friend Dave and my friend Randy. These are guys that are retired, and if I needed them, they'd be there in a heartbeat. In fact, Dave's always like begging me to invite him into my life. Like, I was complaining about mowing the lawn. Well, I can come help you do that. Like, Dave, you can hardly walk, man. You don't need to help me mow my lawn. I'm just fat and I need to get over it. I need to mow the lawn. I'm just complaining. It's okay. Thank you for offering to help me. I appreciate you.
I love that. I will kind of end this part with this. A lot of conversations. A lot of what I talk about is what I've learned from countless men I've spoken to, and I learned from every man I've learned from you. I've really kind of discovered that a really good friend will tell you who you are. Your children will show you.
Mm,
If you watch your kids, you'll discover just how good of a man or parent or whatever. Because your kids are you, just in smaller form. How do they handle conflict? How do they enjoy things? How do they talk to people? They do what they saw you do. So it's always important. It's good to have really good older friends or somebody to talk to, but it's also good to be that person for somebody else. And in the cases as a father, that's what we are to our kids. So watch them. I love watching my kids. I love hearing people tell me, oh my goodness, your kids were here. And my younger, who doesn't like to share, and she didn't want to share. And your kid was so nice. And they handled it so well. You're doing such a good job. And I'm like, it's like, yeah, thank you. I'm pretty awesome as a dad. And I feel pretty good. Look, my son is good. Look, he opens the door when his sisters come in. He's respectful. He's all these good things. Like, your kids can really make you feel good about yourself, or they could show you just that you suck. So,
Have you ever noticed the things that drive you the most nuts about them are the things that are the most true about you?
oh, every
Oh,
single day, every day,
oh my
every
goodness.
day.
Even the
Oh my
grown
God.
ones, man. And you do you have grown kids too?
My oldest is an 18-year-old boy.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, when they're grown, man, it's like you you are proud to see them on their own and you're proud of their accomplishments and you're like excited about all that, but you're also a little bit like, are they going to make it? And you
Right,
never stop
right.
really worrying about them. My mom always used to say that. She still says that to me, you know, just because you're grown up doesn't mean I don't worry about you. And that's my mom voice that I always get in trouble for using because it doesn't sound like her, but it does in my head. But, man, yeah, that's 100% true. I know that uh, I've heard it said, I think I heard it at a Promise Keepers event. I don't know if you ever heard of Promise Keepers, a big Christian men's conference. And this guy said, you can tell a lot about a man because the value of a man is reflected in the countenance or the face of his wife. And um, I started paying attention to that. And when you see, uh, when you see that wife and she looks at her husband like he's a peanut butter sandwich, like, oh yeah, you know, and you can see it like she loves him,
Mhm.
and when I first heard it, my wife's face wasn't looking like I was a peanut butter sandwich. And so I knew I had a lot of work to do. But I think there's also something in the same vein that you could say about your kids. And I mean, when they're teenagers, they're always going to look at you like you're stupid because that's just teenagers.
Yep.
But um, now that my kids are grown, I'm starting to see them talk, I'll see them or overhear them talk about me, and they sometimes are seeing me the same way with that same look in their eye that they had when they were little. And that's kind of a nice thing to kind of finally be over that I hate you because you're dad, phase. So
I hope to get there one day. Right now, my kids still think I'm crazy, but partially it's because I do it on purpose because I know it bugs them. I get quite joy out of messing with my kids, and I earn it because I'm dad. I'm allowed to do it, so I think
that's
it's
your
fun.
job.
Damn right it is.
Part of your job is introducing controlled doses of misery in their life.
Oh yes. Oh yes. I like that's a really good description. I'm gonna go tell them in a few minutes. I think I'm gonna do that. This is what I'm here for. You mean I like it, but there's a reason. We'll figure that out. Thank you so much for answering all these questions. Thank you for being here. How can my listeners find you?
Yeah. So if you go to manlihood.com or joshhatcher.com. So, if you're listening and you're like, I don't care about all the man stuff, go to joshhatcher.com and you'll see all the man stuff, but other stuff too. Um, I've got my, if you get on Amazon and you look up Josh Hatcher, you'll find all kinds of stuff. If you Google me, you're going to find a baseball player and a jazz saxophonist and maybe me. This baseball player apparently is taken off because my Google search results keep getting bumped down. But if you go
Okay.
to joshhatcher.com, or if you go to manlihood.com, and all my socials are linked there and you can follow me, send me a message. I'd love to talk to you if you've got questions or if you just want to connect. I'm here for you, man. So
Okay. Cool. And the podcast, they can find all that on your website and everything too,
yeah,
right?
yes, you can find it there as well. Also, if you are listening to, Apple or Spotify or wherever, I've got it distributed. So if you type in Manlihood ManCast, I think if you just type in Manlihood, it should come up. But if you type in Manlihood ManCast, it will come up in any of the podcast platforms.
Fantastic. All that will be in the episode notes. Thanks, Josh. I appreciate your time. It was a great conversation, and I want to do it again. I want to talk again with you. I hope sometime next year, if you're up to it, talking again, and we can each kind of share notes and see if we are where we said we were going to be. Because I
That'd
got
be
plans.
awesome.
I got stuff that I want to do. Same for you, podcast, weight loss, your health, whatever. We could just talk about it. So there's a little accountability.
You
Just
might
drop a little bit in there for you.
you might change my
But,
name from Slick to Slim.
so, ooh, I like that. Oh, I like that. Slim, slick, or slick, slim. We'll stick with one. We'll stick with that. You don't need even
I
the
don't need to be a
snickness.
hyphenate.
Yes. Josh, it was a pleasure. Thank you to everybody who watches / listens to the podcast. Thank you to Kristen McGriff. She does my intro. It's a man's podcast, but I'm like, I need a nice, smooth woman's voice to start. So nice intro. She brings us in and then she ends it. So thank you to her. She has the Candid Shop podcast. Give her a listen. Finally, thank you to all the men out there and women too, whoever listening, for listening to Men Are the Prize, the podcast, where your inner monologue is revealed. Have a great week. I'll see you soon.